Hi everybody, Steve Griffiths here, developer of the MTPredictor software program. In today's video I'll be using the brand new MTPredictor version 7. This is just coming out on beta release at the moment, March the 1st, 2012, to have a look at the USE minis. So it's the absolute brand new version of our standalone MTPredictor. It's MTPredictor version 7. But let's have a look at the USE minis for yesterday, which was February the 29th, Wednesday. As usual, we'll go through the 15-minute charts to see what was happening yesterday, and then we'll move down to the shorter term charts. On the 15-minute NQ, we actually had a sell setup here halfway through the day. You can see, so we'll be looking at that a bit later. On the ES, if I put the DP support on from the prior low. Remember, if we go back to before the market opened, these DPs are on our charts in advance. In other words, they're leading indicators, and during our webinar yesterday John was actually looking at this DP support, so had this highlighted for potential customers, and we saw that as the market came down it found support at this particular level and then rallied up. And on the ES it rallied up into, just move that across a bit, into a TS1 sell setup here, which put the analysis on, which formed a high before the market began to fall off. So that's what we'll be looking at in a minute. We'll be looking at particularly this, I'll just take these off here, risk reward, particularly how we could have got a short trade off this high here on the shorter term charts. On the 15-minute YM, again, if I put the DP on from a prior pivot, you can see that the DP came in and actually nailed. The one we're looking at is this particular low here, nailed this low here after the initial sell-off early in the day before we got a rally. And the Russell Index, there wasn't any particularly good pattern on the Russell Index. So let's just review that. On the 50-minute YM, we came down into DP support, had a rally back up. On the ES, we came down to DP support as well, rally up into a sell setup on the 15-minute chart. Same with the NQ, having a sell setup. So what could we have done from the trading side on the shorter term charts? Well, on the ES, we noticed if we go back to early part of the day, we zoom in a bit, we noticed that if we put the DP from here, that actually nailed the very low that nailed the very low of the day where the market made its low. Remember, this was also at a 15-minute DP support as well. In fact, actually what I can do is I can change this to a 15-minute chart. Just bear with me and just clear that off, and if I put this DP support on here on the 15-minute chart and now go back to the 3-minute chart, you can see where this is. And as you can see here, this is where our 15-minute decision point was coming in. So you could see on your 3-minute chart that we were at 15-minute support. So you could have got a trade off here as the market rallied. There was a sell set up here, but the market didn't go down very far. It did go past the 100% initial risk. So if you were short, knowing that we were rallying up against this DP, you'd want to brought your stop down to at least break even to have a break even trade off this. But the markets I particularly want to look at are the NQ and the YM on the 3-minute charts, particularly coming into these highs of the day, or not the highs of the day, these corrective highs here. Because if you remember, on the ES chart we had a TS1 sell setup coming in on the 15-minute time frame, as well as a sell setup coming on the NQ on the 15-minute time frame. So as these markets were rallying up here, we want to be very, very careful about, if I just zoom in a bit, very careful about looking at this continued rally. So for here, again, the DP is a very good tool because it provides support or resistance in advance. So if I put the DP off this high, you can see this was giving us 3-minute decision point resistance, and that is where the NQ rallied up into before the sharp fall into just before the close. Now ideally we'd look at this for a high volume VSA spike trade, but on this particular chart this bar here was not highlighted with our VSA spike. The one a couple of bars earlier was, but that did not break the prior high, so would not be considered a VSA trade setup. But the situation is quite different when we look at the YM. If we now look at the YM coming into this high here, remember we can put our DP resistance on our chart and have it on our chart in advance, so that's there already. Then as the market goes up into that high, if we look at these bars here, we look at the volume, we can see that this bar here has now been highlighted as a high volume VSA bar. So in other words, this would actually represent a good trading opportunity to get short, particularly as the 15-minute ES chart. Now remember, ES is normally the boss, it's the one that takes all other markets with it. So particularly as we had a sell setup coming in on the ES, and if I right mouse click and do Elliott wave minor, you can see this is where our minor ABC was coming into, the corrective TS1 sell. So as this was coming in, it was okay to then look for a short trade on the YM, even though the 15-minute YM didn't give us this particular setup. Remember, the ES is the boss. Initial target would be the DP off this low here, which is down here. So if we put the risk reward on, we can get a trade set up in and around this bar here, a nice potential 3.1R trade. But because the VSA setup is a place where professionals, that is professionals, tend to enter the market, we don't normally look for the first target, because we normally assume that the professionals are going to move the market a long way, and therefore we're normally going to get a big move, particularly as the 15-minute ES was giving us, if I clear that off, was giving us a sell setup here that had projected targets down here to new lows of the day. So when this setup came in here, we're anticipating that the ES was going to make a new low of the day, in other words go down to new lows, so therefore it made no sense to look to have a profit target here on the YM. We'd want to come back to this low here and have our DP target for this trade at new lows as well. So if I just grab this position here and take it down to here, this would be our target for our YM trade. So as you can see, it's a potential 10R profit, so a very good one to consider. If we scroll forward, the market didn't quite make it, and in fact coming out on about close here would have still been about a 6.9R profit, which is a good trade all in all. So yesterday, for the advanced MTPredictor traders among you, would have been a good day, particularly if you'd been following the 15-minute charts, and this is what we always tell you to do. Always keep an eye on the 15-minute charts, and spotted this ABC correction coming up into this TS1 sell, particularly on the ES, and also a similar one on the NQ, but particularly the ES because that's the boss. So as that was coming in, start looking at the other markets, and even though there were markets were rallying up into decision point levels here, the ES was not a perfect setup, but the YM here was with our high VSA trade. And as you can see, this would allow you to get short and as a result have a good trade on the way down there into the close. The standard buy setup here on the YM would have been avoided because it was against a red STF. I just wanted to put that in as a PS for the standard traders among you. So a good example here of using the 15-minute charts to gauge your larger degree trend direction, and then coming in on some advanced trade setups on your 3-minute charts to then get a very nice short trade as the markets fell off into the close yesterday.